My name's John Brosdine. I'm the Kittery Harbor Master. I've been doing this for, this is my 7th season, I think, actually. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. So when I first came in the job, we had a boat, and it was a good boat, but it didn't do, after a few years, I realized that we needed a boat that did a lot more for the people that we serve. So thankfully the town manager and the town council and the fire department and the police department, everybody came together and we were able to build that boat. And it's everything we could possibly ever ask for. It does a little bit of everything, and afterwards, if you want to come on, you can step on and I'll explain everything to you. And then came the name. And I wanted to name it because it's a boat. You're supposed to name it, after a woman, and I wanted to name it after a historic, Kittery woman. And there's a lot. It turns out I didn't know until I started working on the waterfront. There's like a whole bunch of people did a whole bunch of cool stuff. But flashback to about 20 years ago, I did a traffic stop down on Rainbow Harbor Road, and during that stop, the guy literally ran out of the car and ran into that house. I had no idea it was there. I was fairly brand new here. And ended up taking him into custody. And when I was talking to the longtime police officers that were there, I said, "What is Rock Rest?" I'd been here a couple years. And they told me, because they clearly didn't know, that it was Underground Railroad from the Civil War. And I was like, "Oh, cool." So then, I don't know how long ago, it was several months ago, we got talking about it. And I said, "Well, what about, Rock Rest?" I said, "What was the name?" I said, "What about Rock Rest?" And I said the house that was involved with the Underground Railroad, and the town manager and Suzanne and everybody was like, "No, it didn't." And I went, "Oh." So I worked 20 some odd years thinking that's what it was, and then they told me it was a civil rights movement, and they told me all about it, and then they told me the name, and I love the name. It sounds so much like a boat. It's just, it's the coolest boat name ever. So, and then I started actually reading about it, and about what they did back then, and I thought, a vast difference, but we have similarities. I try to create a safe place for people that visit from away, and while they're here, I want to make them safe and comfortable and make them enjoy their stay, and it sounds like that's what Hazel and Clayton did back in the day, but of course their circumstances were a lot worse than mine. So I just thought it was fitting because, she did some amazing stuff, the family did some amazing stuff, and we're trying to do some amazing stuff. So I just want to do a couple of quick thank yous. The graphics on the side, the signature that I believe the Black Heritage Trail found for us, and Coastal Speed Pro over in Portsmouth actually was able to create it into our signature, which you'll see on both underneath the front windows on the port and starboard side. And then Seacoast Printing, which is actually one of our firefighters, it's him and his family's company. They actually donated that canvas cover on the back that has the name of the boat and it has the picture of the rock. They went as far as actually going down there and taking another picture because the one I gave them was not really great and it had grass in front of it and everything. So they went down and took it and they did that, and it was great. And again, I can't thank the town and the fire department and the police department and Tom Allen, here at Safe Harbor. These guys have been more than helpful to me whenever I need it. We work together trying to serve our community and our customers and the people that visit so that they can have a safe, relaxing time away from all the everything going on in the world today. I think that's about it because I'm pretty nervous. So if you're okay with it?
You mind to take a cookie before the
Oh yeah. Betsy Wish over here, AKA Kayaking with Cookies. She actually did a bunch of stuff for Hazel and Clayton, and there's some stuff on the table over there about it, and then there's actually her recipe for sugar cookies that she made that are right in there too. Feel free to grab some, just make sure I get one, because they're delicious. And I think that's... Yes. Next Darian is coming over. She can talk to him. And she's got better shoes than I have.
Thank you so much. Can you hear? Yeah. I'll get closer. So thank you so much, all of you, for coming out for this momentous moment. My name is Jerry Ann Bogus, and I'm the Executive Director for the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. And we are indeed honored. And I had to write my notes because I wanted to be really specific, so forgive me for reading. We're indeed honored to be here today to honor Mrs. Hazel Sinclair, a remarkable woman whose legacy continues to inspire us even today. I want to thank the folks who proposed the idea, and I heard today that it was our harbor master, so I want to thank John Brosnian for proposing the idea and for making it happen. It's such a big deal to have your name remembered, honored and remembered for generations to come. So honoring Hazel indeed is something we're delighted about. I also want to thank for Kendra Amaral. I'm not Jamaican. The Kittery Town Council and Town Manager for making this possible. There are also some other people here that I want to mention. Unfortunately, Valerie Cunningham is not able to be here with us today, but I want the people who knew Hazel to raise their hands. Who knew Mrs. Sinclair. Thank you so much. And I want the rest of us to look around and see those hands that were raised and to realize that the history that I will share a little bit with you is not long ago. It's within our lifetime. I also want to honor and welcome Mrs. Sinclair's great-great-grandson, Clayton Sinclair IV, who's with us. And his mother, Nicole Sinclair, who's in beside him. They flew in from Atlanta to be here for this moment. And I think it's a serendipitous moment because today, April the 25th, marks almost to a year to the date, April 26th, when Mrs. Sinclair grandson, Clayton III, passed away. So Mrs. Sinclair must have been whispering in your ear to make this happen on this day in this year. The people I want to just raise awareness for in these pages are Calvin and Royaline Edwards. Thank you both for coming out. They were very close personal friends with the Sinclairs through their church and civil rights activities, and they lived right here in Kittery. Richard Candy, he was the chief negotiator helping the Black Heritage Trail to save and protect the Rockrest House. And we thank you, Richard, for all the work in making that a historic site. Bob Shepard, he interviewed Mrs. Sinclair for an article on Kittery residents. Noor Shu was also a collaborator on that event. And one of the most touching things that the trail did, if anybody was part of the reburial of the enslaved people in Portsmouth in honoring of the burying ground, was the work that Peter Lamb did. He took some in the remodeling. There were some 1800 beams that were in that house. He hand shaved all of those, and they were used to line the coffins that the remains were put in for the reburial. So thank you for all that work, Peter. That's awesome. And if I missed somebody, Jody Fernald, whose parents were also close friends with the Sinclairs, and Evelyn New, who also knew the Sinclairs very well. And for the others, I'm just glad that you could be here today to share this moment with all of us. And I'm sure you have better stories than I do. Everything I learned about them, I learned from Valerie Cunningham, who worked at Rockrest during her teenage years. So Mrs. Hazel Sinclair and her husband Clayton opened their home, Rock Rest, in Kittery Point as a guest house for black travelers during de facto segregation. Rock Rest offered a rare place of comfort and safety where guests could feel welcome while traveling through Maine from the 1940s through the 1970s, not that long ago. With the naming of the harbor master vessel, Mrs. Sinclair's legacy of providing safe protection and comfort in her home will now continue into Kittery's waterways. And I'm using the name Mrs. Sinclair because Valerie told me that that was what everyone called her. Nobody called her Hazel or Hazel Sinclair. She was Mrs. Sinclair.
Change
As
the
a-
name of the boat, John.
No, I mean, she wrote her name there. At least we know who it is. But in calling, in naming, it was a sign of deep respect for her place in the community. Mrs. Sinclair was born in Baltimore and first came to Maine in 1929 as a lady's maid for a New York woman. Later, the lady pursued her to be the cook for the family. She'd go on later to take classes and become a caterer, a chef. She was the only chef at Rock Rest. Hazel, and this is the part I love, it just makes my heart warm. Hazel met Clayton Sinclair in 1936. He was from South Carolina and was the chauffeur for another New York family. Near the end of their summer courtship, Hazel and Clayton decided to marry and to remain in the seacoast instead of returning to New York. Now I can just imagine how distraught Mrs. St. Clair was when Clayton brought her to the little house on Rock Island and showed her their new home. According to Valerie, Hazel protested loudly and said that she would never step foot in that house, what she called the old shack in the woods of Kittery Point, until it was presentable. Later, Mrs. Sinclair would joke that he never stopped making improvements to the house. He was always adding something on. By 1946, Hazel realized that they could turn their home into a summer guest house for African American travelers. They called it Rock Rest, and it was known for its location near the ocean. It was safe, clean accommodations, warm hospitality, and fine dining twice daily. Valerie fondly remembers Hazel's lobster thermidor and codfish bowls with grits that were served on Saturday mornings. Rock Rest was not listed in what we know today as the Green Book because the guest house was always booked up. It was the reservations were made a year in advance and told by word of mouth. The reputation grew by word of mouth. For those of you who may not know what the Green Book is, it was a list of safe accommodations, dining facilities, gas stations, shops where black people could enter or stay without fear for their lives or the Jim Crow laws. Fitting that she's on a police boat. Thanks to the business records Mrs. Sinclair kept, we knew she welcomed patrons from 28 states. Visitors included black professionals, doctors, lawyers, and business owners. This impressed the young African American staff who worked there, for they could see and mingle with this group of professionals from all over the country. In addition to being entrepreneurs, business people, Hazel and Clayton were active members of the community. The Sinclairs established New Hampshire's first NAACP branch in 1958 and fought for social justice in voting rights, housing, and public accommodations. In a later interview, when talking with Valerie did an oral history along with Ralph about her life. Mrs. Sinclair said, "I would cook and work hard all summer. Then we would take our vacation in the fall. We went to Mexico, Canada, and the Caribbean. I have no regrets. Mrs. Sinclair lived a full and rewarding life. She was a woman who lived with a purpose, and I'm sure she's smiling down on us right now. With this naming of the Hazel Sinclair Harbor Master Boat, a hard-working vessel, we honor a hard-working woman who served her community and navigated a troubled era to find safe harbor in her journey for the American dream and in pursuit of happiness. So thank you all for being here to share this moment with us. And a special thanks to the family.
So nice to meet you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
nice to
I'm
meet you.
Kendra Emerald. I have the honor of being town manager here in Kittery, and apparently a very short person, not in the fields today. So I just want to offer a few more thank yous before we launch the vessels. So first of all, we would like to thank Tom Allen, the Safe Harbor Marina, for providing us the space for the ceremony. This has been really helpful and allows us to have multiple people gathered and here for the event. We want to thank Nick Pappin of York Trolley Company for providing the transportation through the trolley. Nick is a new Kittery resident, so we also welcome him to the town of Kittery. We want to thank Jerry Ann and the New Hampshire Black Heritage Trail for attending, coordinating, and helping making this happen. I want to thank Haley and Suzanne in our office, Haley Mock and Suzanne Esposito, for also helping to coordinate this event and ensure that everybody knows about it and can come out and help us celebrate. And finally, we want to thank Mrs. Nicole Sinclair and Clayton Sinclair IV for joining us. And I would like to welcome you both up to help us launch the vessel. So please come on up.
Launch the Hazel Sinclair Harbor Master Boat.
This is my regular operation.